Welcome to Yes, I'm a Scientist, where we have diverse conversations with diverse people about science, careers, life, and advice. In today's conversation, we have a scientist who specialises in allergy, and she explains how her own peanut allergy led her to her current PhD research, where she is investigating the mechanisms of peanut and red meat alpha-gal allergy. She joins us from North Carolina, USA, and explains her journey as a Black female scientist. Today we have Jada Suber, and I'm really excited to have a conversation with her today. So Jada is a PhD candidate in the Microbiology and Immunology department at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Before enrolling as a graduate student, she obtained her Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from Presbyterian College and completed a post-baccalaureate research education program, also known as PrEP, at the Medical University of South Carolina. She was recently featured as an early career panelist during the inaugural Black and Immuno Week, and her current thesis work involves investigating inhibitory mechanisms of effector cells in peanut allergy and alpha-gal allergy. Outside the lab, Jada enjoys combining her love for science and creativity by creating and selling, in her own words, nerdy t-shirts via an Etsy shop. Jada also enjoys thrifting, collecting vinyl records, and painting. Thank you so much, Jada, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah, so how are you? How was your week this week? It's currently Saturday.
This week was pretty good. I think a little better because I may have gotten some positive data.
That's great.
which is always nice considering, a lot of times we see negative data, but I think I might be on to something. So I'm excited.
That's great. That's great. So it'd be great if we could just start off with a bit of a background as to who you are, where are you from, where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up in a really, really small town in rural South Carolina. I was raised by my mom in a single parent household, which I love to say because a lot of times there's like this negative connotation with being from a single parent household, but honestly, it has shaped me into the person that I am today. And I am forever grateful for it, to be honest, and for my mom. But so I grew up in a small town and I think I was just your normal average country Black girl. If you can hear my accent, I try to cover up some of it, but it was fun. I mean, I had always been like interested in science. When I was little, I actually thought I wanted to be a medical doctor. So the goal most of my life was to become a medical doctor. And when I was 7, I actually found out I had food allergies. And so that was actually it was sad, I guess, to say the least. I was pretty devastated, but eventually that devastation turned into, okay, well, maybe the type of doctor that you want to be can be different, because at that time, I had wanted to be a pediatrician. So then I ended up switching to, okay, well, you can become an allergist and then you can help all of the people who have allergies just like you. So that was the goal for the longest. And then when I got to undergrad, I had gone through this program. It was a Mentors for Minorities program. So I actually had a medical student mentor. And I remember specifically them saying if you want to be a good medical school applicant, research will look good. And I was like, okay, sure, I'll try it. I want to go to medical school. Duh, I'll do it. And so I signed up for this program at the Medical University of South Carolina. And so when I was in undergrad, there were 2 summers where I actually traveled to Charleston and I stayed there for 10 weeks each summer, and I would do research. And that was my introduction into research, real scientific research. And so I ended up falling in love with it. And it was a beautiful thing and a scary thing all at the same time, because it was almost like, well, what do you want to do? Like, are you wanting to go to medical school, or would you like to pursue research? And I think I struggled like a lot with that thought, because it was like, maybe you're just chickening out of the idea of going to medical school, but it ended up being meant to be. It was crazy. And so I ended up pursuing the PhD. But the first time I actually applied, like at the very end, because I really struggled with this. It was like up until the very end, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I applied at the very end of undergrad, and I didn't get into the school that I had applied to. But at that time, there was people that I knew from that program, because it was in Charleston. I had done all these summers there. That was actually where I had done that Mentors for Minority in Medicine program. I had done a lot of stuff there, so they knew me, and they reached out and they were like, if you want to pursue a PhD, we have this prep program that we're starting here. Now, those prep programs are like well known, and they have them in different places, but it was the first year that they would be starting it at MUSC. And so that if you want to consider applying here, let us know. We have all of your information that we can use from your PhD application and use it for this one. And I was like, yes, I want to do that. So I ended up applying for that through that. And then I had an interview, and then I got in, and it was wonderful because I came from a chemistry background, and I was trying to go into immunology, because the goal was still to go into food allergy. Like no matter what I was doing, it was going to be food allergy, something. And so I wanted to get into food allergy research, and then that would require me to do more immunology work. And so it was a nice transition for me from chemistry into immunology, because I had no immunology background whatsoever.
How is that jump from being a chemist to an immunologist?
It's a huge jump. The beautiful thing about chemistry, I guess, is chemistry is in everything. Like, you never really escape chemistry, no matter how hard you try, like, especially in the research setting. So it was nice to be able to like keep pieces of chemistry, but it was difficult at times to like just gather all of this new information, because it was a lot. Yeah. Immunology is a lot. Yeah. And I feel like, honestly, I'm still like learning to this day, but it's something that's kind of, I guess, well known in the sciences for people to like switch into different science fields. It's a task, but it's very possible. So
yeah, no, definitely.
It was a nice transition.
So you mentioned that you grew up in a small town. Can you talk a bit more about that? Like, how was school, and what was the like demographics of your town?
Well, that's a wonderful question. So where I grew up was majority white, and I'll talk about with my friends like what their background was like, and what the different, I guess, demographics for their towns and stuff were. And it's amazing to see the differences, because some of my friends, like a lot of people talk about how much more diverse, I guess, their hometowns and stuff were, where mine wasn't as diverse. So I honestly thought most of the world, I guess, looked like it. You grew up in a small town, I guess you just assume like that's just like, that's just normal. That's just how things are. So I think it's about 70% white, and I don't know if it was 20% Black. Then we have, I don't know, some percentage of Hispanics, and then I don't know how much more diverse we actually get. I think it might be becoming more diverse like now, but it was interesting, because honestly, this is even crazier that you mentioned it. The town that I grew up in, like the county that I grew up in, actually now has a movie.
Okay.
And there's a movie about like this prominent Black pastor in the community, and how he worked to kind of like fight against racism that was going on in the town, because the county had like the only KKK shop to like exist. I feel like, I don't know if it was the only one in the country. And so it would like draw in people from different places, and then they would come to this KKK shop. So it, of course, brought a lot of divide within like communities and stuff. But I recently watched the movie, and watching it, it was like I knew a lot of that stuff existed, but to see it on TV, it just makes it so much more real and so much more like, wow, how did you get out of there? Like, what the world? But yeah, so there were some little hurdles, and you knew things existed. Honestly, a lot of things I kind of chalked up to just being normal. And It was amazing because when I got here, we went through a race exhibit, and it was nice because it had all these different things to talk about, just, I don't know, different races and like what happened in the past. It was very much historical, but then they had this moment where everybody got in this huge circle, and it allowed everybody an opportunity to just like speak on their experiences involving race and racism and all this stuff. And so a lot of the people at the exhibit talked about how, like, coming to North Carolina, they felt like they had lost a lot of diversity around them. And then they thought like they had experiences like with racism, like a lot more. So every time somebody would mention something, it sounded so normal to me. I was like, well, that happens all the time. That happens all the time. And it just kept going to the point where in my mind, I was like, oh no, like this is like, you're numb. Like you don't even realize it happens so much that you're numb to what actually is going on around you and how terrible it always is, but you've become so used to it. Like it's not even affecting you as much anymore. And that was a huge eye opener for me. And it was even huger because before everybody was talking, in my mind, I came to North Carolina thinking, wow, this is like the most diverse like I've ever seen before. And it was like no, not from the real world perspective.
So how old do you think you were when you kind of realized that race was an issue or racism was an issue? Like, when were you actively aware of it?
I feel like I don't know. I don't know if there was like an exact moment. It was a thing that I always knew was present. Like I mentioned, because that shop was like close by. It wasn't like something that was easy to ignore. So it was like you knew it existed. You knew there were people who didn't necessarily like you for the color of your skin. It was just, you avoid certain. So I avoided a couple of places when I grew up. And that's so bad when you think about it. Like there were places I just wouldn't go. And then there were people that you just kind of knew not to really have too much, I guess, of an encounter with. But I don't know if there was like an exact moment when I just realized that it was a thing. Now, I've had moments where it was just blatant in my face, like being called an N-word at one point, being followed around stores. It's insane. But yeah.
Do you think that had an impact on your academic life, like from school to university, maybe compared to your peers? Do you think it had an effect?
I think so. Definitely, only because generally in school, it was a game. And maybe that's, I'm glad you brought this out. Maybe this was the actual moment. Like my mom she's always real with me, very real. And she let me know, like in the beginning, like this is a game. Like this thing you call life is a game, and you have to know how to play it. And so it was always, when I was in school, I would work extra hard. Don't get me wrong, I was a good kid, a good student, but it was like I put in extra work because it was like I have to be all of this much better for people to even like notice that I exist and not throw me into like a category. Because honestly, that happened to a lot of like my Black peers, and it was so sad to see because it was so many talented students that were just getting like thrown under the rug because it was almost like they were being categorized before they even really got a chance. And so I had a few moments where it was almost the point where they were trying to put me in that, I guess, category too, but it's subtle. And it's it's so subtle how it happens. I remember one, and this might seem so, I guess, minor, But
No.
it was like I walked into school. You know, most schools have dress codes about how you're supposed to dress. So I walk into school, I had just gotten off the bus, and we used to go into a gym and wait until school actually started. And so I was walking up the bleachers to sit down, and somebody called me, one of the teachers, and said, go to the office. And I was like, okay, what did I do? And they were like, you have dress code violation. And I looked, I was like, what? Yo, I don't know. So then I walked out, and one of the teachers stopped me, another one, and said, where are you going? And I was like, well, so-and-so told me to go to the office for a dress code violation. And that person looked at me and was like, just go, and they'll just send you back and say you're fine. And I was like, okay. So I went, and then they had this thing where it was me and it was another girl. And then they were like, raise your hands, because apparently they thought my shirt was too short. Raise your hands. So we both raised our hands up. You can't see anything on my stomach. You clearly see hers. And they're like, well, yours is a close call. This is what they said to me. And I was like, what? And then they were like, we're giving you detention. And then they start like writing this thing down. And mind you, I am like hardcore serious about not getting into trouble, because like it's so easy to get put into these traps. And then all of a sudden you're like a bad kid, and like you're labeled, and that follows you. And so I was so hurt. I don't know. It was like, I didn't. So I got home that day. My mom saw it all over my face when I walked up, and she was like, what's wrong with you? And I told her, and she was like, get in the car. And so we went back to the school, and my mom said, I don't send my child to school with inappropriate clothes. And then they were like, well, it was a close call. Like it wasn't like a thing, like too bad. But, and then she was, what? So they ended up taking that detention back. But I know how many other students, like, they don't necessarily have parents who can come like immediately after school to address an issue like that. Some parents have to work at strange hours. Like it's just different for everybody. And so, I mean, that's why I'm continuously grateful to my mom, because she knew I was a good kid and she was going to fight for me regardless. And so like, that's how it starts though. And it seems so minor, but it's like, it starts that way. And then all of a sudden you're labeled as like this kid who gets in trouble. And then all of the teachers know, and then it follows you. Just like a good reputation will follow you, a negative one follows you too. Yeah. And so, yeah, that was a huge, huge thing. But I think that's one of my biggest problems with some of the public school, I guess, regulations or whatever they have going on.
How is your application journey? So when you're applying for university, how was that process? Did you feel supported? Were you encouraged? Because, yeah, a degree in chemistry is a great achievement.
That's so sweet. And then, yeah, I mean, in high school going into college, did I feel supported?
Yeah.
So by the time I was in high school, everybody knew me as like, oh, it's Jada. And I had made a name for myself as like the good kid. I'd done it. I was one of the good ones. And that sounds so bad, but that's what they didn't even realize. But at the same time, that's kind of what it felt like. But everybody knew me, and it was like, yeah, Jada, she's great, and blah, blah, blah. And they were very like excited and supportive. And I had in my mind where I was going to undergrad. Mind you, the undergrad that I attended was a PWI, a predominantly white institution. And it was really great school, which is why I wanted to go. And they were known for like some of their sciences. And it was like one of those, it was like prestige to a certain extent, especially in that community. So it was just like, I want to go. Like, that's where I'm going. And then they had a nice one-on-one type of feel, because it was a small, very small private school. And so I think for the most part, I had a lot of support. Like I got everybody, most of the teachers that I knew, to write me a recommendation letter. Like it was bad, because I think I had sent like 10. I don't even think you can do stuff like that anymore. But at that time, like they didn't have a limit. And so I was like, this is the school I want to go to. I want a letter from you. And so and then I told my guidance counselor at the time, like, I want all of these to go. Like, that's it. And then she says stuff about how, well, you know, the school isn't for everybody. And her intentions were not bad at all. But I feel like hearing that, being anybody else, any other kind of student, that could have been perceived in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Only because you just never know how that could sound. Like it was
because you had the grades, you met the requirements to get there.
Yeah.
So what was the
problem?
Yeah.
So I know her intent was to say, like, some people just really go to the school and they love it, which is the truth. And some people really go to the school and they hate it. And that could also be very environmentally driven too. It was predominantly white, but I don't know. It's just a way. I don't know why that stuck with me for the longest time, because that is one of the sweetest people I think I know. But just knowing how that could have been perceived by somebody else kind of just makes you wonder, like, how words affect students as they go on. Like, you hear certain things all throughout school. One of my things that I hate the most now looking back is how people try to tell you, like, the way that you're speaking is incorrect. So there's a dialect, African American vernacular, like English, like there is not incorrect. It's a different dialect.
Yeah.
There should be more focus on the translation from that dialect into standard English, which is more acceptable. But it should never be made to put, I guess, out that you are just like incorrect. You're wrong. This is not correct. What you're doing is wrong, because that kind of messes with your identity too. It's almost like your identity is not good enough. It's wrong. It's incorrect. And I don't think they realize how much of an impact that is having on people too, without even really knowing. But regardless of all of those things, for the most part, I feel like I was supported. And going into, I guess, that school, I don't know, that was like a dream school to me. And to get it, like, that meant the world to get into that school. I felt like I was on cloud nine. I still see like old Facebook posts when I was like, I'm so excited to be going to.
Wow. That's great. And then when you finally arrived, how was it? How was your experience in your bachelor's degree? It was great.
That school is located in the same town that I'm originally from. And so I feel like there probably was some talk before I got there. So I had a decent reputation behind my name before even showing up at the door. So that helped me out tremendously. And then when I got there, I think I'm a pretty easygoing person, fun to be around. So it just made it easier. And then, I don't know, I enjoyed my time at Presbyterian College. I really did. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some things that need to change there as well. But I definitely enjoyed the time that I had. And I think I benefited from, of course, being from that same town. And then also even being a Black girl in chemistry, because I don't know, I feel like it's easy to just push you out there. Oh, hey, here's this Black girl that's into science. And yeah, because, you know, the assumption when you go to schools like that is that you play a sport. And I don't. I am not athletic. So I think it made it easier to like push me out there to be like, hey, we have some Black people who aren't into sports and do other things too. Like, put her out there. So that worked to my benefit, I guess.
So could you explain, because I think it's different in the UK. So when you say about playing sport, so will people go to university on sports scholarships, or how does that work?
Yeah. So people do go to schools on sports scholarships. And a lot of times the Black students, especially at the school that I came from, would be playing some type of sport like football or basketball. So the assumption was that was the only reason that they were actually in this school, because it was predominantly white. And that's unfortunate, because a lot of the people that I know who played sports were like really dope individuals. And like, I knew some football players who are now lawyers. Like, it's not just, oh, they're here just because of sport.
Yeah.
But that's the assumption. When a Black face is seen on campus, that's like the immediate thought. And that's And it sucks because it honestly, most of the time, it's kind of coming from parents, because that's generally when I heard that. Like, when they would come, we would have like a family weekend or something. So people's families would come, and then if you interacted with people, a lot of times they would say, "Oh, what sport do you play?" And it was like, what? Like, whoa, buddy. I don't.
What were your classmates like, and your friends, your friendship circle?
My class. So the beautiful thing, at least to me, about chemistry was there weren't, I guess that's not that beautiful. There weren't that many people who were into chemistry. I honestly graduated in a group of 6. It was 6 of us who graduated with degrees in chemistry from my school. And we were all very close. In my class, I was, of course, the only Black girl in chemistry, but there were a couple of other Black people in chemistry too, like the year before me, maybe a couple in the year after me. But the friendships that I had with the people around me actually were, they were amazing. I loved all of them. It was like a very family oriented place. I spent a lot of time, especially with my chemistry friends, because we were always in lab. Like, we would have 3-hour labs twice a week. And we would have homework, and then we would all like gather in like one of our professors' offices and be working on homework. We spent a lot of time together. So my friendships that I actually created were amazing. So I don't regret. So I encountered a lot of really, really wonderful people there. Now, I'm sure there was some other people, but I was too much into the people I was around to even notice or care as much.
Okay. Were you part of any societies, or did you do extracurricular?
The problem with me at that time was I rarely said no. That was a bad. I said no to like hardly anything. I would be in all of the organizations if I could. So I was a part of pre-med club because, like I said, I wanted to be a medical doctor. I was even the president of the pre-med club, which is wow. Think about it. I was the president of the pre-med club at one point. And so I would take pictures for the newspaper sometimes there. And I was also in like this creative writing group. It was like I don't even know what you would actually call it. Because creative writing was actually my minor. And a lot of people thought that was strange, but I enjoy the creative side of things only because I think it keeps me balanced. And so I was into some of those type of like artsy, like writing things.
That's
and then I ended up helping with a lot of organizations that I wasn't even a part of because I was just always on campus. And the craziest part is I didn't live on campus, but nobody really knew. Because I remember like well into second, third year, somebody was like, Jada, what dorm are you in? And I'm like, I don't live here. I've never lived where you're talking about. But I was always on campus, and so it was hard for them to tell. I also worked in the library. I was such a nerd. Worked in the library, and I also worked in like our student center. I was everywhere.
Wow. So can you briefly explain what the prep program that you did was, what that is?
Yeah, so the prep program is different depending on what institution that you go to, because some institutions you can do this for like 1 or 2 years, and some it's just 1 year. Mine was only 1. And during that program, you actually get to take a couple of graduate school courses. So I took, I think, some generic course that they had, but then I also took an immunology like section of one, which was helpful. And then in addition to that, you also get like help with GRE, which is an exam that you have to take, or you used to have to take. You probably, I don't know if they're still taking it or not, but you used to have to take it to get in. It was almost like it was a standardized test that would help you or hurt you from getting into graduate school. I think now a lot of people are kind of shying away from those scores only because there have been studies that shown that it's not like it doesn't show you how well a student will or will not do in graduate school. So But yeah, it gave you prep for that exam. And then it was nice because I think they actually paid for you to take the exam too. And then they also paid you. So it was somewhat like the experience you would get from graduate school.
Okay. Would you recommend it? Would you recommend it to someone?
I would absolutely recommend the prep program, especially if you're jumping like I did, because it was a nice transition, at least for me. Gives you more research experience, which is always good. You get to attend different conferences. There's one specifically geared at minorities where they like have all of these schools in one place. And it's like you get to go talk to all of them, which is amazing. And then a lot of times they'll give you waivers for the application, which is also nice because that gets a little pricey when you start counting the number of schools you might want to attend or at least apply to. So, yeah.
How much is it roughly to apply to graduate school in the US?
I think it varies depending on the school. I could be very wrong, but I feel like it was $80 somewhere in that thing. I could be very wrong. That was it feels like so long ago, but it wasn't something that I wanted to chalk up like 5 times.
No, that's a lot.
I did not want to pay that.
Especially as a student. Yeah, it's a lot.
Right. Right. And so it was nice to get those waivers. And I think I got waived from whatever schools that I ended up applying to. And then a couple that I didn't end up applying to. So that was a wonderful opportunity. And then just to be able to have more research under your belt, like you can never go wrong with more research experience. And the opportunity to explore more schools as well, because I was honestly, when I initially applied, only applying to one school, and that limited me greatly in a lot of different ways. One being there was no food allergy research going on at the school that I had initially applied to. So in this program, I looked at different schools. I looked at the different people doing food allergy research, and I got to be like, oh, wow, it would be worth going to because this is actually what I want to get into right now. And so it opened a lot of doors.
So you finished the prep program and now you're living the dream and you're doing food allergy research. How did you get to where you are?
Yes, I am living the dream. I have to remind myself I am living the dream.
Yeah, remind your 7-year-old Jada that you made it.
I made it, Jada. You made it. Yeah. So it's crazy that you say that because I honestly found, and I have not told anybody this, because I was like, maybe you should just wait until you graduate to even say it, or maybe when you actually do it. But I found like this old bio. You know, when you were younger, they used to make you write autobiographies about you. So I found one. And I think I was 14 at the time. And I literally had on there that I wanted to either be a pediatrician or an allergist, because I can't remember which one I had decided on at that point, if I had switched it. But I had in there specifically that I wanted to find a cure for peanut allergy. And I did see that and be like, wow, you might make little Jada actually proud. Like, you haven't cured it, but like to be in that field at least is just like, I don't know, it's mind blowing. So you're right. I am living.
Yeah.
But yeah, how I got here, honestly, I think it had a lot to do with just having the allergy itself. So it's crazy because it used to be the biggest burden, one of the biggest burdens I feel like I had, but it turned into one of the biggest blessings. And I just can't, it's not often that you get to say, I'm actually glad that I had a food allergy, because I felt like it gave my life purpose. And so it's a fight every day, even on days when I like am annoyed, because, you know, science is very much a roller coaster, an emotional roller coaster. And on days when I have fallen out with science and we are not friends for that day, it's nice to kind of reevaluate and just be like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to leave? Are you really going to leave? No. So it keeps you here. It definitely does on the bad days. And it pushes you and encourages you to keep going. And then I don't know, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that 7-year-old me had a food allergy. And I mean, I guess currently me too, but.
So the lab that you're in now, how did you end up pursuing your PhD where you are now?
So I found the lab during that prep program. Mm-hmm. And I had mentioned to the people over the prep program, this is where I want to go. It was almost like I was reliving my high school years, wanting to go to my undergrad. And I was like, this is it. This is where I want to go. This is where I'm going. So, and everybody always brings up, it's good to have backup plans and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I roll my eyes and I'm just like, yeah. It's always good to have a backup plan. I have one, but this is where I'm going. And I honestly chose this school for the specific lab because of food allergy research. And it was crazy because after I mentioned it, one of the faculty members over the program saw that one of my PIs was actually giving a talk at a conference. And the deadline was that day to go and sign up to go to that conference. And I had like an extra conference that I could attend based off of like the funding that they had for each student. And she was like, do you want to go? We can sign you up today. And I was like, yeah. So I sent an email to him and then I was like, hey, I'll be attending this conference. I'm looking forward to hearing all of this stuff because it was crazy because it was about food allergy. And then I was studying like the microbiome at the time, and it was a food allergy and microbiome conference. And I was like, well, where does that happen? Like when? So I was just like, I'm very excited to learn a little bit more about some of the stuff that I'm doing, but then also more about food allergy, which is what I really would love to get into. And if we could meet, that would be great because I would also love to potentially join your lab if I come to UNC. So he replied, which was interesting because, you know, a lot of times you don't think people will respond. They will see your email and be like, yeah, sure. But he responded and then I actually met him and then it was nice. And he was like, yeah, if you end up coming to UNC, you could join. And so I guess the rest is history.
So maybe now we could segue into your science and maybe you can, just describe what you're researching on and what you're doing.
So what I study is mast cells. It'll be my favorite immune cell, and I'm going to tell everybody it should be theirs too. But the mast cell is actually one of the main drivers in the allergic response. And so it's found in tissue all over the body, and it's actually full of like these chemicals. One of the chemicals that everybody will probably be the most familiar with will be histamine, of course. But there are a lot of other chemicals that are in here as well. And so these mast cells in allergic people actually are coated with these antibodies that you see here. They're coated with these antibodies that actually target whatever food that person is allergic to. So at some point, when a person becomes allergic, they actually encounter this allergen and then their body starts pumping out this antibody or these antibodies that target that food. And then they go sit and coat these mast cells. And then you're like set up. Like this is a setup in the beginning. And so when somebody encounters whatever that food is again, then that food can bind basically in a special way to these antibodies. And that special way of binding is called cross-linking. And so it actually means it's just binding two of these at once. And so it'll cross-link, and this actually turns the mast cell on. And then the mast cell then spits out all of the chemicals from the inside into the body. And that's what causes the allergic reaction. So my job has been to basically look for ways to stop that from happening. That would be ideal. So I'm looking for different ways where we can stop those chemicals from coming outside of the cell. And I do this in the context of both peanut allergy, which everybody I'm sure has heard of, is really common, but also red meat allergy. And this is, I guess, one of the exciting things to talk about only because it's a little less known. If people have heard about it, they probably have heard of it on the news as red meat allergy, but this is also known as alpha-gal allergy. So this red meat allergy or alpha-gal allergy is actually an allergy to a sugar called alpha-gal. And it's caused by a tick bite. And I think that's probably one of the most intriguing pieces of red meat allergy. So like I told you earlier, in normal allergies like peanut, you are exposed in some type of way, generally like orally. But with red meat allergy, it's this tick bite that causes you this increase or production of these IgE antibodies that target that sugar, alpha-gal. So the coolest part, at least in my opinion, is there are some pretty key differences between like what we know as normal allergy, like peanut, seafood, wheat, all those, and alpha-gal allergy. So I'm considering common allergy as like our normal peanut, shellfish, all of those things. And then comparing it to red meat. So like I said earlier, with red meat, you have these antibodies that are being formed against the sugar, which is crazy, at least to us, because what we've known for eternity, it feels like, is that these antibodies are generally produced to protein in all these other allergies. So peanut proteins, seafood proteins, protein is what we've always known as proteins. And here comes red meat allergy, like really changing the game. And so also for common allergies, the reactions are generally pretty quick, pretty immediate. They happen within minutes. But red meat allergy, the reactions are actually pretty delayed. And that has been probably one of the other most intriguing pieces about this, because these people will eat their sources of red meat that have these alpha-gal sugars in them, and then they won't respond until 2+ hours later. And I'm talking, it can range from 2 hours to 8 hours later, which of course makes it difficult for people to even like know that it was the red meat that caused it in the first place. And so it's intriguing, these huge differences that exist. And some of our work also is focused on, are there differences or similarities in how that downstream reaction is even occurring between like common allergy, which I will always use as peanut. It will be peanut for me, peanut and red meat allergy. And so it's been fun so far to just play around with these two very different allergies, but very similar in some ways too. So that's kind of the gist, I guess, of what I do.
Okay, so I had a few questions, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because it's really interesting, because I don't know, is it actually true that nowadays allergies are more common? Is it, I don't know, in the general population that like people and children are more likely to have allergies?
Yeah, so it seems that it is a lot more common. People will attribute that to a lot of different things. Of course, we don't know the exact thing, but there have been lots of talk of all of the differences from, I guess, the past until now, like what things could have changed. And I don't know if you've heard of the hygiene hypothesis. That's one of them. We're too clean. And it affects our microbiome, of course. And then our microbes are changing, and the good bacteria that we have aren't as diverse as they should be potentially, which is leading to more allergies, or like all of these things there's some genetic component, I think some people think, where that could be related to why people's allergies are, but I don't think it's just one thing. I think there are a lot of things that are contributing to the generation of allergies and in their growth.
Yeah. So you mentioned different factors. So do you think it's a balance between like your environment and your genetics, or like it's a mixture between everything?
I think it's definitely a mixture. Because they do studies where they look at people from different backgrounds, like rural versus more urban, suburban like areas, and people who come from different backgrounds. But there has to be so much more research, in my opinion, that needs to be done, especially because I don't think we have enough, data to be able to say too much about all the different communities, because it seems that in Black and Hispanics, allergies are a little bit more prevalent, but the reality of those numbers of individuals being increased in the different studies is fairly low. So we have a lot more work to do before we're able to really like pinpoint certain things, because even our populations that are being targeted are a little biased.
Yeah. So that's interesting that you said that Black and Hispanics are more likely. Is that in the US or in Europe?
I can't remember who studied where all they looked, so I don't want to say it wrong, but
No,
there are definitely studies out there that talk about, especially more recently after all the stuff that has, I guess, happened. It has started becoming a thing to I guess look more into what the prevalence and stuff was, and that was kind of like a more recent study where they started talking about how more Black and Hispanic people, allergies were more prevalent in those communities.
When does allergy start? So it's probably a very vague question, but I don't know, just trying to think about, like, for example, like pregnant people are told not to have shellfish or eat certain foods. Do you have an opinion, or do you know about research that's done on exposure and how early you should be exposed or you shouldn't be exposed to certain allergens?
Yeah, there are lots of lots of talk, lots of things when allergy actually starts. So right now, I feel like they are encouraging people to like expose children to allergens at younger ages, which is interesting because I feel like they were saying something different, of course, in the past, but after more research was done, they're like, no, we probably should start introducing these foods earlier. But as far as when it actually comes, vary. Generally, it does start for like younger children. But the type of allergy, I feel like plays a role also, because honestly, like when you think about peanut, I would very much associate that with younger children becoming allergic at a like small age, and then hopefully outgrowing it. But generally, peanut is one of those that doesn't get outgrown. Like milk and egg are more likely to be outgrown. They'll have it as a kid, and it generally will outgrow it. But peanut, tree nut, those are ones. Fish, I don't think those are easily outgrown. But red meat, we're gonna bring red meat back. Alpha-gal allergy is interesting because a lot of this is happening at later stages. And so these are older people who are ending up with these problems, more so associated with this tick bite that's happening later in their life. But they come in sounding like saying, like, I've eaten this all my life. Like I've never had an issue with it before, and now it's a problem. And that has got to be another intriguing thing about this one too. But that one is more common to be in adults than in children. But
okay. So with the
why?
So with the alpha-gal, you have to have had the tick bite, or you assume that the person has definitely had the tick bite. There's no other way to be, because if the person's eaten meat their whole life, then it's strange, because then their immune system's seen the alpha-gal their whole life. So why is it now all of a sudden that?
Yeah. So the thought behind that is the tick that is associated with it is called a Lone Star tick. And that tick is actually found in like the southeastern parts of the United States. And those are the areas that generally have the most problems with like this specific allergy. Like this allergy is like prevalent in other countries as well. Like it exists in other countries, but there's another tick associated with it depending on where it is. I feel like Japan and Australia are other countries that also have it, but they have a different tick associated with it. The Lone Star tick here in America is interesting because it has alpha-gal present in it. And I think they're thinking that something happens during that bite, where you have alpha-gal and you also have maybe some components of the tick, whatever they have in them, maybe somehow altering something in the immune system to trigger this. Now I cannot tolerate this alpha-gal sugar anymore. So it's fairly intriguing.
So the alpha-gal is in the tick saliva or something that's in the bite. So is the actual molecule, does it look the same as the molecule that you find in meat, or is it just a part of it, or is it the whole, like, say like the antibodies that are raised to it, is it like a certain part of the sugar, or is it known what is being recognized?
Yeah, so it's a pretty specific molecule only because alpha-gal actually is galactose, alpha-1,3 galactose, and it's that linkage, that 1,3 linkage that's very important because there are other sugars very similar to it, but this one I think is the one I don't know, it's special, I guess. It definitely is important. That molecule is important, and there have been some interesting thoughts or other studies done where it's very similar to, I think, type B blood. And I think they even think that there are some associations with people having a less likely chance to develop the allergy if they have type B blood. But there are a lot of things that we still are not very sure of. But
so which animals have alpha-gal? So people don't have alpha-gal, yeah.
No, people don't. We don't have alpha-gal in us, only because there is some enzyme that we don't make so we don't express the epitopes for them, but we don't have them. However, all non-primate mammals do. So that would be cow and pigs and lamb and like you name it.
Meat that you find in the supermarket or your butcher.
Yeah, and some people even have issues with dairy because there's some byproducts of some of those animals will also have that sugar in it too. So
that's interesting.
It's pretty intense. However, I think at least what seems to be at least nice about the whole alpha-gal thing is a lot of sometimes people can avoid alpha-gal for a distinct amount of time, and then their antibody levels against it will definitely go down. And some people have even been able to like introduce those foods back into their diet without having issues. But that is, in my opinion, is also interesting because that's not always the case in common allergies. Like your IgE levels to peanut could go down, but that does not mean it's a good idea to start eating peanuts again. Like it's interesting, but it seems to be a little bit more, like a lot better with alpha-gal for that to work.
So are there any treatments for alpha-gal allergy? Or
other than avoidance, no. No, it's been one of those things where it's just like normal allergies, just avoid it. That is just more beneficial because the chances of being able to introduce it back into your diet, in my opinion, are higher for alpha-gal allergy than they are for some other ones, but especially some main key ones. But I think the biggest issue becomes the patients themselves because they have had this all their lives. And it's a different ballgame, I think, as to growing up with it as a kid, because you grow up with it as a kid and like it becomes part of your normal life to avoid a certain food. But as an adult, with people who really love eating like some of these meats, I think it's much harder for them to fathom because it's just like, what do you mean? Like, I am an adult. I have been in this for years and years and years, and now I just can't have it anymore. And I think that's hard. That's probably the hardest thing for them.
Yeah. So going back, so you work with mast cells, and you said that they release histamine. So might be quite a basic question. So like, you know, you can go to the pharmacy and you can buy antihistamines. Do they have an effect on mast cells, or how do your regular antihistamines work?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So the antihistamine is good, but it's not stopping anaphylaxis. It can aid in just some of the reaction itself, but it won't fix it. And I think there's probably some misconception in that. People think that, oh, I could just take the antihistamine and I'll be okay. The problem is that histamine is one of those chemicals, and there are tons of other ones. And those are the ones that are going to cause you other issues. So you end up with the inability to breathe and the drop in blood pressure. And histamine it's not going to stop all of those things. That's what the epi-pen is actually good for. So
how does the epi-pen work? What are the components in that injection?
So the epi-pen has epinephrine in it. And epinephrine is great because it actually counters all of the symptoms that you see. So the drop in blood pressure, the inability to breathe, like all of those things are actually being countered. Whereas in histamine, you're just stopping blocking these histamines, which is good, but you still need way more to actually stop this anaphylactic reaction from occurring.
So, sorry, one more question.
No, it's fine.
It's really interesting. So I think nowadays a lot more people are saying that you know, they're going dairy free and they may be lactose intolerant. Do you think, could you first of all explain the difference between allergy and intolerance? And also, do you think it's necessary for people to go dairy free or try and eliminate some of these known allergens in their diet?
Whether or not people should eliminate dairy I don't know. I think that's a personal preference. Honestly, personally, I have started to stay away from certain things only because I feel like I may have some intolerance to certain things, not like everything. But, or if I just don't like the way I feel after I eat it, I'm not going to eat it anymore. That doesn't necessarily mean I have an allergy. But yeah, when it comes to an allergy, the allergy is when you're actually forming these IgE antibodies against the food. And then your body kind of sees it as bad. Like, this is dangerous. Don't bring this to us. So when you eat it, it's just an immediate, oh, we're targeting this thing. It's bound to our cells. It turned our mast cells on, and now we're just gonna spit all of our guts out into your bloodstream. And you shouldn't have done it. But when it's an intolerance, it's not as, I don't know how to describe it. It's not IgE driven. I can tell you that much.
Okay.
The effects it's not life-threatening. I guess that's probably I'll call it that. That's the biggest difference. It wouldn't be like a life-threatening, this is going to lead you to anaphylaxis at all. It's causing you discomfort, and it's probably interfering with comfort levels, but it is not the same risk of like anaphylaxis, like a life-threatening problem. So that would honestly be how I just describe the difference. Allergies, life-threatening. Intolerance is more I don't want to downplay it either, because intolerance can be painful, but it's not life-threatening. So I don't know though, as far as eliminating, that is personal preference. I have no clue what people do. I know there are some things I will eliminate. I definitely feel like I might have some intolerance to milk, but it'll give me like more problems with gas, and I think makes my chest hurt because of the gas bubble. So I just avoid some of it. But I think it's more so what people notice. You have to be mindful of your own body and what it does and does not like. So listen to your body. That's what I can say. Definitely listen.
Is it true that that there's a genetic like race component to, like, say for example, lactose intolerant? Is it true that maybe ethnic minorities are more likely to have lactose intolerance?
I'm not sure. No, I don't know. Now that's something I need to look up.
Okay.
I have no idea. I have no clue. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I won't say one way or the other, but it can make some. I would believe it. I would definitely believe it.
No, that's cool. So you were saying that with peanut allergies and more common allergies, it's protein versus sugar. Are there any other allergies like sugar-based or carbohydrate-based allergies, or is it only alpha-gal that's known?
So right now, alpha-gal is the main one. I think I may have found one paper with something that might have suggested sugar from something else, but like from so long ago. Like it was just like in the weeds. You know how you go down these rabbit holes and you're like, what is this paper from 1980? So I think I may have found one or two other papers, but overall, alpha-gal seems to be like the main one that involves sugar. Now, will this open the door for us to start identifying more sugars causing allergies as well? Potentially. I think so. But we'll see.
And that's interesting because I think like in some diseases like glycoproteins or glycolipids have been implicated in disease, but so maybe in other allergies, they may have a role. So yeah. Oh, thank you. That's so interesting. So if we kind of go back to your journey. So now you're a graduate student and maybe just pivoting to talking about your identity, if you could kind of maybe talk us through, what do you identify and, who you identify as a person?
Yeah, I identify as a Black woman. My mom is Black. So is my biological, like I'm Black. And it's interesting that you even asked that because a lot of times I feel like you encounter, I guess, interesting conversations as you go through graduate school. So at some point in this graduate school career, I had an older, very old, he was old, that's why I let him slide, but an older white man asked me what I was. And I was rather confused as to like how to respond, because I'm like, he can't be asking me what I think he's asking me, but he was. And so I told him, I'm like, I'm Black. And he's like, no. And I was so taken aback. It was just like, what do you mean? Like, I just told you what I am and you're disagreeing. Like, sir, I'm not making this up. Like, this is it. But, and I laugh at it now, but just that, like, I don't know. I guess you have to laugh to stop yourself from just being annoyed by some of the things that people say. But definitely I identify as a Black woman because I am. And I just think it's interesting, like the things that you encounter because of it as you go through.
What about the intersectionality? Do you like looking at each component being Black and then being a woman? Do you think, like, how has your experience been in academia?
It has been an interesting one, to say the least. I would say it's nothing that I'm not used to, but people bring a new version of crazy, I guess, every day, and you just never really saw it coming. So there have been difficulties for both reasons. Honestly, in some panel, I remember somebody specifically asking which one I thought was worse, racism or sexism. And I went with racism. I think a couple other people might have said sexism, but I went with racism because, yes, don't get me wrong, both cause issues, definitely. But the racism piece has just been a little bit more because you can be in the room with other women, white women specifically, and you will be questioned just a little bit more, or you will be, basically questioned like, are you sure? Do you know that? Is that real? And that doesn't happen to the white women around. And it's just like, well, I don't see any other difference as to like what would cause this other than the race piece. But yeah, it definitely has brought some trials, some microaggressions, some I don't know, interesting times.
Yeah. I don't know if you wanted to share any more on that, or
I can share the safe pieces, but
I
can share the safe pieces. As far as the microaggressions are concerned, I used to have issues with talking with a specific person in the lab, and somebody else would walk up and just interrupt every day. No matter what the conversation was, we could be talking hardcore science, and this person would just walk up, not address me at all, direct their questions to her. And it was like I didn't exist. I wasn't having a conversation. And this happened so often that I ended up bringing it up to her, because I was like, listen, do you notice that every time that we're having a conversation, this person decides to come and just start talking to you and never addresses me, never says anything, doesn't look at me, just immediately says your name, talks to you. And she said she was like, yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable. Like I don't understand why it's happening. And kind of like we left it at that, only because I know if I say something, I'm just going to be viewed as the angry Black woman, and nobody's going to pay any attention. It's just going to be, oh, she's just mad. It's just normal. She'll be okay. But the day other people decide to speak up and be like, hey, this is an issue, why do you constantly come and interrupt these conversations and like don't feel the need to at least say excuse me? That is when I think the actual change in those types of situations will occur. But until that happens, we'll see.
Yeah. So how do you deal with that?
I am, well, I think I generally just ignore, because there are bigger and crazier things that have happened. It gets frustrating. I don't want that to be put down at all. It definitely gets frustrating and annoying at times. And it makes you feel a way. And I definitely understand that this is happening everywhere. Like, this isn't just happening to me. But the one thing that at least I'll credit my own self in is the fact that no matter how crazy things have gotten and how much you kind of just get annoyed with it to the point where you just want to go away, I'm not leaving until I get my PhD. And I've made that very clear. And I want people to know that, because I think those little things build and play a role in why people choose to leave like these fields. And I understand it wholeheartedly and completely. Like, I literally had a friend who's a Black male came in with my cohort who decided to leave. And one of the things he said was, I don't have to take this. And I understood, like, it makes sense. We're grown people. We do not have to be treated this way. You don't have to put up with it. And I get that. I respect that. But I also hate that so much, because it's just like, there are so many wonderful scientists who are being pushed away from these fields because of those types of interactions.
Do you think, because like throughout the past year, there's been a lot of a lot more conversation about race and the experience of Black people around the world, and especially in America. Do you think there's been a change, and also what has been your experience?
You want my honest opinion?
Whatever you're comfortable. Yeah, sharing.
My honest opinion is, I think, to describe the way I feel, I'm kind of over it. And over it in the sense of when people decide to, like, when all of this stuff started happening, like last year, and it was really bad, and then everybody wanted to stand with Black people, and they had all these things to say. There were so many times where I rolled my eyes at so many emails, because it's just like you get these emails from the people who've done things to you, but they stand with the Black community, and they definitely are for inclusion. And it's like, no, you're not. Mm-hmm. You're not. I know firsthand you are not. And it's just like, whatever. And you just kind of let it roll off and you keep going. But then you see like these committees being formed, because that's the thing. People form all of these committees, and the idea of it is wonderful. But I feel like unless these people are able to do all the things that they actually want to do and are not like censored in a way, because it's almost like, we're going to make this committee because it looks good, and we're going to let you guys have these conversations to fix things, but we're always going to have our hand in it because we can't do this, but we can't do this. That's too far. Like, maybe we should try doing this. And it's just like, is there a real point at this point? Like, I have avoided so many of those committees, so many of those like meetings, because it's exhausting, honestly. Yeah. And until you show me in your day-to-day, like with the students that you interact with, I'll never believe you.
So do you see the issue? I know you mentioned that, one of your colleagues, but do you see it more of an issue with the faculty and the more senior members of staff, or do you think it's across the board, this kind of systemic?
I think it's definitely across the board, but I have seen probably more of the issue with more senior people, which is what causes, I think, the bigger issue, because the problem then becomes, as the student, like the chances of somebody like really speaking up and telling everything are slim, only because either they want to stay in these fields and they don't want to be labeled as like the troublemaker, or basically like they're not comfortable enough to just come out and say it. I mean, I feel like, honestly, just like I said earlier, I'll tell you the safe ones. Nobody is comfortable enough to say it all before they get everything that they want. Like, before I get this PhD. And that comes too, because it's just like, you feel like you have to be, like, you're policing yourself based off of your experiences. It's not your fault that you went through those experiences, but you feel the need to hold it back only because you don't want any extra repercussions because of it later.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. Yeah, I think it's, because in life, as a Black woman, you pick your battles, because it's hard enough already without then trying and fix systemic problems when, like you said, your focus and your goal is your PhD, your career, your academic life. So, but what advice would you give to somebody that's aspiring to be where you are, or coming up, perhaps maybe, looking to do a PhD or go to graduate school?
Well, I always first say you should definitely, this is the weirdest part. I definitely say I want people to pursue their dreams. Like, if this is something that they're interested in, I want them to do it, and I want them to do it with like every piece of them, because other people should not be able to step on or hinder you from reaching whatever goals or dreams that you have. So whatever they are, go after them full force, because you can do it. And my God, we need you in this space more than ever, to be honest. The issue that I had, even when I say that and mean it wholeheartedly, is I want the people who come in the future, they definitely come, but I want them to be treated better than I was treated. That has to, like, the treatment of students, especially minority students, has to change. It has to change drastically for me to at least, I think, be a little bit more comfortable even in my saying it, or at least just saying it without having that disclaimer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are the things. But I definitely, I love the idea of kids and anybody being excited about science, and especially kids, minority kids, because a lot of times you see them and they just don't think it's for them. And that's not true. It's so not true. Like, this is absolutely for you too. We have a little group of us, and it's been amazing to see, even through Black and Immuno, to meet you, to meet everybody there. It was just so encouraging to be like, golly, we're here, we're present. It's hard to see us, but we're here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what advice would you give to someone that's maybe struggling? Because you mentioned that you've got an amazing mother who's always championed you, but for people, maybe young Black women that maybe don't have that support or encouragement, how would you encourage them to keep going and have that drive and determination?
Yeah, that is important. You have to definitely look for ways to encourage yourself, especially if you don't have anybody around you to encourage you. So probably during one of my darkest times here, I always have my mom. She's always there. But reaching out to find mentors is absolutely crucial. So when going into any kind of, probably any field, not even scientific, but specifically in science, having mentors is amazing. So reach out to whoever you can to get the mentorship that you feel like you need, to get that support that you feel like you need, because there's somebody out there willing to give it. I promise you that. You just have to find them. That's it. I promise you, you just have to find the right person, and the right person will give you the support that you feel like you deserve, because you do deserve it. And I feel like a lot of times we don't necessarily feel like that's a part of it. Like, oh, maybe that's just not it. Like I'm supposed to do this all by myself. You can, but at the same time, you definitely deserve that support, and you can get it if you find the right mentor. So mentors are critical. If you find yourself in a point where you don't have a mentor and you're like working alone, doing things alone, find different ways to like encourage yourself. This is going to sound probably loony, but one of the ways that I worked to encourage at least myself too, don't get me wrong, still have my mom. I always have my mom. One of the ways I worked to encourage myself too was odd, because I had a moment where I was just, I was not necessarily as happy as I would have liked to be because of the environment. And so I wanted to do the science. I'll never not like food allergy research because I'm tied to it for life. But I was struggling with the idea of wanting to be in a certain environment all the time. So it made it a little bit more difficult to want to go to lab sometimes. And so I started making these videos, and it was weird. I would just like record myself in lab, speed it up, and put it to music. I love music. I'm a music person. My mom plays the piano. Like, I love music, and it was the music that I enjoyed. And so some of it was R&B, some of it was rap. It was a little bit of any and everything, because I like a lot of different types of music. And it was almost like I was hyping my own self up. It was like, I'm going to look at this later. Like, I would post it on like my personal Instagram just for the heck of it. But I would look at it myself, and it would be like, if I saw somebody else doing this, would this hype me up type thing? Like, maybe I can hype myself back into wanting to be here as bad as I was like a long time ago. And so what ended up happening was other people on my personal Instagram was like, oh, this looks so cool. Oh, I showed this to my kid. And then I don't know, that was a lot for me, because it was just like, well, dang, even your existence where you are right now is enough to encourage somebody else which is encouraging to me. So it was like this crazy inspirational cycle, but it helped me. And hopefully it encouraged some little kids to go into science, because it was just like, those things, you could do those things. You could like this type of music and be doing science at the same time. Like, there are a lot of different factors, I guess, that played a role into that. But it was exciting. And then I even had one friend to tell me, I wish I was as happy as you were, or as you are, going into lab. And I had to, I was like, are you kidding me? Do not let this social media fool you. I'm trying to get myself back to that point. But I don't know. It was crazy how that whole thing worked, but it definitely helped me. So whatever ways you can figure out to push yourself, and if it falls into categories of whatever you like to do, like I included music. I love music. So I pushed it into whatever I was doing. Don't get me wrong. We listen to music, and I listen to music in my headphones and labs all the time. I know there are plenty of other people who do too. It's just like, let's just make this more loud, more visible. And then I didn't realize how making myself visible in a space could be beneficial to me and other people, only because for the longest time, I didn't even feel like I had a right. And this sounds crazy too, saying, to be seen in science, because it was like, I'm not justified. Like, I'm not a real scientist. That's what it felt like. It's just like, how can you put yourself out there like that if you're not finished yet? It was like, I felt like I needed to be done with the PhD before I could actually show myself as a scientist. And that's not true at all either.
No. And you had finished your degree at that point. You have a bachelor's in chemistry, which is... I
had a whole degree in chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah, somehow.
One of the hardest degrees you can do ever.
And that's another thing. Imposter syndrome plays such a huge role in this whole process. So it's like you talk yourself out of believing that what you've done is a big deal, because in my mind, it's just like, anybody can do a chemistry degree. Anybody can do it.
No, so. Do you feel like a scientist now? Like, where are you? Where are you now?
I have my days where it's just like, you are, like, I tell myself, I am a scientist. There's no, I am a full-blown scientist. It sounds weird coming out of my mouth still sometimes.
Yeah.
Feeling like it'll be complete when I finish the whole PhD, but I know I'm a scientist. It's just like, one of those, it's a constant battle with yourself. Like, you're a scientist, but you're not done yet.
But I think there's always, you can always progress to the next level. So, when you're an undergrad, you want to graduate and have your degree. And then, like you said, when you're postgraduate, you want to, and then it's like, okay, as a postdoc, I want a job. Yeah, I want to get a grant so I can do independent research. I want to, and then when you become faculty, it's like there's always another level that you can reach to. And I think it's good to acknowledge your achievements and the hard work that is, and the places that you've been through, and what you've achieved, which is a lot, because you worked hard to get there. And as you said, people on the outside looking in will be like, wow, that's amazing,
Yeah, it's crazy. And then I can always talk myself down and be like, nope, it's small. You need to do better. So it's insane how that actually works. But memories help too. And I realized this recently because I think I had taken a picture, because beginning of April is when I found out that I had gotten into school here. And it was 5 years ago on April the 1st. But I was like, it's not April Fool's show. It was dated from the 31st. But it's easy to forget. Like, when you go through all of the stuff from grad school, it's easy to forget a lot of stuff. But to see that memory and go back to that day did somewhat of a number, because it was almost like I forgot how bad I just wanted to be here. Like, just to get, because it was always the thought, if you could just get there, like if you could just be like, if you could just get in, that's all you need to do is get in, and then you can worry about the rest of it later. And it was almost like I had forgotten that. And it was like, girl, you are living your dream. Like you wanted to just be here. Like, don't forget that. But yeah, that I saw that the other, because I legit cried the day I got into UNC. It was crazy. I sat down. It was like a Friday. I sat down at my computer and I opened the email, and then I saw congratulations, and then it was tears. And somebody else in my prep lab was like, what? I got in, but it was like I couldn't hardly get it out. And she was like, you got in. And then she came and gave me a hug. And I was in tears. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't talk.
Wow. That's amazing. And now you're nearly finished. That's amazing.
I'm nearly finished. Yes, I'm nearly finished.
Yeah. No, that's really great. So like, where do you see your future? What are your goals?
I think my problem is I have too much. I want to do way too much. So one of the things that I've seen myself potentially doing is either teaching, maybe at like a small undergrad institution, kind of like the one that I went to. So I could do small research on the side, because I feel like I want to always be tied to food allergy research, just because it's such a big part and piece of me. And so I could see myself potentially teaching at an undergrad institution, doing small research, or they never tell you they tell you all the time, never to fight the idea of becoming a PI. And I'm just like, I'm fighting it. But at the same time, that idea is intriguing, to be like, maybe I could eventually become like PI over my own lab at some medical institution, and be at a medical institution, potentially even in South Carolina, that doesn't have food allergy research, and be that food allergy person there. That would be ideal to me too. So why
are you fighting the idea?
Because it's that imposter syndrome where it's like, who's going to listen to you? Do you know things? It's like you constantly fight with yourself in your head. And it's just like, that sounds like a lot of responsibility. And I look at mentors that I admire the most. And I remember, like, with all of them, at some point looking at them in awe, because they sound like a textbook. And it's like amazing to me. It's just like my first research mentor that I had, I love sitting down and talking to him, because it was just like he was a book. He just spit out information. And I remember I used to try to write it all down. And he was like, Jada, just listen. Like, you don't have to write everything. You don't have to write everything down. Just listen. And I was like, okay, I'll try. But I felt like I needed to know like every word he spoke, because he just knew so much. And then I guess in my mind, that's semi-intimidating, because it's just like, well, dang, don't get me wrong. I know that comes with time, but to look at other people and be like, wow, dude, where does that come from? And then my prep PI, he was really good at switching, because I had a project that was different from somebody else in the lab, and somebody else could come in while I was talking to him and ask him a question about it, and he would immediately switch. And in my mind, it's just like, wow, there was no processing in that you didn't need time. You just went to it directly. How did you do that? And like, that was the piece I admired about him. And then I have one of my PIs. She is amazing in the fact that she knows a lot of information too. And I tell her this often, like when I first met her, she's a Black woman. This is the first Black woman research person that I've had as a mentor, which is amazing. And I told her when I met her, I think the first time I saw her was in like a lab meeting. And I sat there and they were interacting, talking, and like she had an answer for everything, it felt like. And I was just like, where did this woman come from? Like, she's a genius. Like, what the heck? But you see like those types of people, and it's just like, could I ever be that person? Like, what? That's like a lot to live up to. So I think that's why I'm always trying to like knock it away. Like, I don't know how to do all that.
But I think, like you said, they didn't get there overnight, and
they didn't.
Yeah. And as you know, when you finish your PhD, you will be the expert on your PhD. So no one else in the world will know your subject, your specific question as much as you will. So I think you just build from there. And, you know, you came from a chemistry background and you've done so much in, you know, the time that you've been doing your work. So I think, I think you'd be a great PI.
That's very sweet of me to say. I'm excited about where it could go. I also enjoy somewhat of science communication too, only because like I love being creative. So I like making pictures, making random nerdy t-shirts. Like I like that kind of stuff. And then to excite non-scientists about science makes me so happy. And I realized that recently too. I talked to a 5th grade class and then I was like, I should try to slip in like a little mini science lesson just to see if but they like responded to it well. And I thought it was so cute because I was like, if any of those kids go home and just tell their parents anything about allergies today, I probably would be the happiest person on the planet.
That's so great.
I enjoyed that. And then I enjoyed making stuff. There was a recent symposium at my institution, and I did a graphical abstract for it. It was the first time they like allowed graphical abstracts as one of the things you could be presenting, and I loved it. And I made it on AlphaGal, and I kind of stole little pieces of what I did from it, not the whole thing, because I was like, I gotta wait to put that out yet. But what one of my PIs, she mentioned like we might be able to use this like for our patients, like to help them understand. Because sometimes we try to communicate like what it is and what happens. And I think they're understanding, but by the end of it, I can tell that they don't know as much as I thought based off of like how I explained it to them. And so, oh my gosh, that would be amazing to me if like some kind of thing that I created was like helpful enough to like a patient. Like I would love that. And so I can see myself in some type of science communication thing too. So
That's
we'll see. I do know I want a science. I keep saying this too. No matter what I do, I want a science center back home to kind of encourage kids, especially minorities in science, and just people in rural areas in general, to really be into science and think that that's an opportunity for them, because it is. So if you expose it to them early, then the chances of them going into it might increase drastically. So we'll see.
That's great. That's really great. So you touched upon your creative side. Can you tell us a bit more about that? And could you show us your t-shirt actually?
Yes. So the t-shirt actually is similar to the image that I showed. I think I used the same one. But I made this originally like a Halloween. It was Halloween. And I was going in the lab and I was like, what do you want to be for Halloween? And I was like, I'll be a sensitized mast cell. And then I was like, how do you do that? And then I started playing with words and thoughts. And I was like, you know how people say don't cross me? Well, the way that the allergen binds to the thing is crossing it. So don't cross-link me. And I was like, that sounds pretty like, you know, kick butt, like, come on. So I was like, that's dope. Let me put that on the shirt. And so I just, you know, made a little image, put it on the shirt, and then I showed up to work. And the people in lab were like, what? Does that say don't
Happy Halloween?
Don't cross-link me? I said, yes, it does. And it was like, I really, like, I had always liked to make little nerdy shirts here or there, because I had gotten like this Cricut machine. So you can like cut out, make things on a computer and it'll cut it out for you on this vinyl. You can iron it on. So I would do stuff like that. And then when people started showing like real interest, I was like, okay, well, maybe I can sell some of them, maybe. And so I played around with the idea, and then I ended up partnering with like this company, because of course as a graduate student, I don't have time to make all of these myself. Like I made my original ones, but I needed some like drop ship type company that would be able to produce the stuff for me and ship it out, because I don't have time. Like I just don't. So I found some, and then I figured out ones that I actually liked, and it just happened. And now I'm selling them on Etsy, which is exciting. And then it's a nice conversation to be able to like interact with people because they're like, what does your shirt mean? And it's like a nice way to be like, well, let me tell you about mine.
That's great. So what's the name of your Etsy shop?
It's called Jada Pearl 2.0, and the point is actually spelled out. And I have a couple things on here. I have a shirt. Pretty Girls Love Science. I brought a couple of them, put them on the side just in case.
Okay.
I have a Pretty Girls Love Science shirt.
Oh, that's great.
And then I have Antibodies shirt. I think this is like the men's shirt. And then I have like a woman's version of this too. And so I think I also have like neck gaiters, so you can use it as a face mask now with antibodies all over it. Yeah. So yeah, whatever it is that I'm feeling, I generally will put it on the shirt. I'll put it on the shirt. That's and then really it's like a walk-in science communication.
That's great. No, that's really great. And you mentioned that you do painting as well? That you're a painter?
Do. And I brought some of those too. But I'm no real painter. Let's just start there. Like,
I think we know that you're very modest. So
I'm no real painter. I do this stuff for fun because I love creativity. I feel like it helps me to balance, but I think it's fun. So this one, this isn't even finished, if I'm not honest, but it was me trying to recreate like a picture of my cells in a microscope.
Oh, wow.
So this is how you know you're a nerd, when like the first thing you think about painting is something from lab, and it's just
cells.
That's
so what type of cells are they?
These are mast cells. But these are like rodent mast cells. And so their shape is a little different, but I didn't quite capture. This is the part I'm not quite done with yet. Because I was supposed to come back and finish this, but I never did. I was just like, you know what? That's good enough.
So is that like the view through the eyepiece, or how?
It is. I think, and honestly, what inspired this is the fact that it's my screensaver on my phone. So I actually took a picture like this, and I wanted to recreate that screensaver on my phone. Yeah. That's so sad.
No, it's great. It's great. You're passionate about your science. That's amazing.
And then another one that I think I have this is more recent. So there's a sitcom from the 70s, Good Times, and they had an episode called Black Jesus. And there was a picture that one of the older siblings had. He was a painter, and he would paint all of these different types of things. He's a wonderful painter. And he made this one for Black Jesus, is what it was called. And it was during Black History Week, because at the time it was week instead of month. Mm-hmm. And the little brother really wanted to hang up the picture that his brother had painted of Black Jesus, because they had a picture of white Jesus on the wall. And so that was like the whole episode. And I was like, for some reason, I just wanted to paint that picture. And it's not the best, but it looks similar to it. So I was very happy with it. So I was just like, you know what? Now I have my own version that I can hang up somewhere, but I have yet to hang up.
You're a woman of many talents. Yeah.
I don't know. I think I just enjoy being creative. I really do enjoy being creative, and it does help me out a lot. And then I can tell when I need to do something, because I'm not as excited or as bubbly, or like you could just feel it. It's just like I feel like I need something else, and that's generally what it is. I need some creative outlet.
Oh, that's great. So I think that's everything. I don't know if you have any final words, anything you'd like to.
No, other than science can be fun. Make sure you have a real mentor. And, do not give up on your dreams. Like those, that's all.
Mm. No, that's great. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and it's been great to get to know you as a person, as a scientist, and hear about your work and your creative side. It's it's been really great, and thank you for your time.
Thank you
for sharing. It's been really great, really inspirational, and I'm excited to see what's next, you know, when you finish your PhD, and be really great to see.
I'm excited too.
Yeah. Wow, great. What are your plans for the rest of the day? It's a Saturday. So.
I don't know. I recently bought roller skates, so I might.
Wow.
When you come from a small town, there's not much to do. We used to roller skate, and I wasn't the best roller skater, but I really enjoyed it. And so I was like, I want to roller skate. So I bought skates, and I might skate around my house later.
That's cool.
Food.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really cool. Oh, thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And